Okay. Let's get started. Let's get started. It's been one of those weeks, folks, but hopefully we can cap it off with a good weekend. Hey there, Tess. I was hoping to get started earlier today, but that just didn't happen. And that's right. We're at day 50 now. Making headway. A beverage here. Let's check in with the kitties. Ember and Sammy have both left the immediate vicinity in order to go over to the food area. Sammy's getting a drink of water, and Ember is like watching her from like 4 feet away. I think Ember wants a drink of water too. Let's find out. So Ember turned to watch Sammy leave to the other room. What are you doing, Ember? Huh? Well, let's see. We have Sherbet over on the bed. Sky was laying kind of to the right of where Sherbet was last I saw him. And it looks like we have Mason top and center of the play area above the black cushion. Just hanging out. No, maybe I'm mistaken. Anyhow, let's see. Okay, so we had a bug last time. Hey there, Oleg. We had a bug last time where the collision wasn't working. The avoidance logic wasn't working. And while I will say I am not thrilled with the way that it's currently working, still there's a lot more jitter than I want. That is acceptable. What I found was within the entity, there was a period where we were using a entity-wide speed value. We are no longer using that value, so I want to get rid of it. Reason being that we were using that value in the calculation down here. Where is it? One of the navigation server sets. Here we go. Agent sense set max neighbor distance. And what this does is it's how far around the enemy or the object it will look for things that it should avoid. If that value is 0, it's not going to find anything to avoid, ever. And since we weren't setting speed anymore, it was always 0. So that central blob blurring around, there's not really much I can do about that. I would like to see if I could, but, you know. So a little jitter's okay. A little jitter's okay. This is when the blobs can move at the same speed as you can. Well, actually twice as fast. There's no escaping them. But real quickly, let's see. So let me show you. This is with it as 0, where it was when I was bashing my forehead against this issue last time. So the first one latches on, and the other ones just completely ignore that it exists. Earth 2 will work better. Hey there, dogs. Welcome. Just showcasing the fix to the navigation logic problem here. I think 1 is sufficient. It will also keep the cap down. I mean, does your screen handle suit you? If it does, then it's a good name. That seems to be plenty. We'll leave that as is. Now, what I can do is change this distance to be like twice its movement speed when we get there. Oh, hey there, Sidey. Welcome back. So go into the entity when we are moving. We do a lot of stuff and we set how we want it to move. And let's not put another calculation in there. This is fine. And hello, Barbed Wire. Hello, everyone. Amber has returned to sit with me. Yeah. Give her some back scratches. Okay, so we fixed movement. One of the other things we did last time was we added the idea of collision handling to the entity before the entire zone was handling it. As part of that, we added a signal called the remove me signal. Oh, hey there, cats. Welcome back. Giving Ember her scratches. Real intensive attention. Not sure how to parse that one, Sine. Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to do now that we've got this right is I want to make sure... yeah, Sherbet is laying on the pillow there. Let's scratch it and make sure he's still there. Make sure the camera hasn't jammed on us. I want to make sure multi-collision is not going entirely wrong here. So that's weapon template 4. Yeah, cats, we've been using piano music for a little bit. I think it feels better. Okay, what was I? We need to look at template 4. Template 4 is currently firing 10 at a time. So let's get the blob spawning real fast here. I haven't yet, Lunar. Okay, so we're still getting multi-collision. So we need to fix this. The first time Okami and I did any sort of stream content together, whether it was like an image or otherwise, people were asking if we were related. Because our character coloration schemes are pretty much the same. I thought we had iframes in place, Lunar, but apparently not yet. Because every one of those mice is hitting one of them in here. Sene, this body is maybe 3 years old. The mental engram contained within it is older than that. Well, I mean, we've got 87 things just jiggling away on the screen, and we are not... I'm sorry. Over 870 things. Okay. So let's look at that collision logic again. It's in the game. We want in the entity. Handle collision. Ender, we're making a game. We're making a Vampire Survivor style game. Oh, for some folks, that's a real aspiration, Sine. Right now, what we're trying to work on is getting some iframes into the entities. So let's... I think... Let's check in with the kitties. A lot of folks joined after. Let's see. We can see 2 of them right now. So Sammy, Ember, and Mason are not visible at the moment. We do have Sky up in his tree, and we have Sherbet on the pillow. No. Say, Sky doesn't get a lot of screen time. Now, Hollow Care is a fun one, Ender. Hollow Care is a fun one. The one thing that I felt like they really needed, that they added very shortly into it. Oh, I had some messages that I didn't see come in here, but they haven't said again. So sorry if I missed a greeting to you folks. I do get distracted by the code. And then I lose... HoloCure added mouse targeting into the game. It's optional, but I don't know why you wouldn't use that option. Okay, so... Right now, colliding isn't really what we want here. We want a time since last collision. Our handle collision... Okay. Do we get a physics tick is the thing. Each collision zone has a physics tick, where it's going to go through and it's either going to cull an entity we're going to be able to move lifespan out. Huh? I have started doing some coding off stream. It's getting engaging enough, and it's also getting involved enough that occasionally I do need to step in and do some extra things. I was trying to work on some upgrade icons for when we get there. I mean, I guess, is that your actual name? Is it Bradley? let's see, thinking. Okay. So here is, if they're within the live zone radius, then what we're going to do is we move them. Then we check their lifespan. We are probably going to move all of this logic into the entity itself. Thank you, Barbed Wire. This is a language called GD script. It is... I'm not super familiar with Python, but I believe it is in that that general vicinity, you know? It is... It's loosely typed, it's variant based, but there is syntax like this for strongly typing things, and I think that is a big deal for making your code coherent. Elden Ring, just like all the Souls games, I like the visuals. I like the world building that they do within it. I feel like some of the gameplay decisions have become calcified and need to be readdressed, but I also feel like it has become some weird badge of the genre, particularly the From Software ones, that they don't change them. I've seen a little of Little Nightmares played. I haven't played it myself, but I like me a creepy setting, you know, a very indirect storytelling creepy setting that can do work. Welcome back. And also mentioning to one of my mods' actions just recently, if you have a question or something, feel free to ask it. I do like to stop and chat with everybody when I can, when I'm not completely engrossed in the code. But I don't really respect demands or repeated requests, especially when those repeated requests do not give me enough time to answer and for you to register that answer. The delay is often at least 15 seconds, especially if your system is not at live. So it does get irritating for somebody to spam a question over and over and over if I have already answered it. So thank you again, Barbed Wire. Anywho. No, Little Nightmares is definitely not like FNAF. It's much more of a light puzzle platformer. Okay, so we move with Delta. This is where we're going to need the iframe to be processed in it, because this is the only time that the entity knows about collision. So, not invulnerable, it is... float is equal to 0.0. Okay, so we want time until collidable. This is where we're going to increase it. Probably going to add a constant for this. I have no problem with that, Sidey. I appreciate the free advertising. less than 0 time until collidable is equal to 0. It does not ring a bell, Starlet. But hello. And we're doing okay, Bose. We're doing okay. It's been a tumultuous week in the schedule, but hopefully this weekend we're gonna hit the ground running again. Rune. Well, hello in any event. Welcome in any event. Forgive me, name changes and missing visits or something like that will throw off my memory. Please don't take it personally. Has to equal 0. We ignore colliding and we do a collision, but time until collidable equal to 0.5, half a second. I fixed the entity movement problem, Bose. Summarizing real quickly, there was a value for speed of an entity that was no longer used. But it was still in the code and it was still being used in the navigation. Like, it was still referenced in navigation. So it was breaking that part. Let's see if the bot... Okay. The bot does need to be called in both YouTube chats. Great. So I apologize, Twitch folks, if this happens. Okay, that's unfortunate. StreamerBot can only see one stream at a time. I'll have to come up with a different solution for that. Might just have to have Nightbot chatting again. We'll see if that one works. But for those in the tall form and in the in Twitch, that's the link to my LinkTree, which includes links to my Discord. Okay, just catching up on chat. Sorry. Okay, so if it has not collided yet, in the last half a second, it can collide again. How do I know the game runs at the same speed? So there's two ticks in the world. There's two clocks. One is the physics clock and one is the rendering clock. They're technically the same clock, but the physics clock runs between visual updates. Visual updates are more expensive than physics updates if you do it right. Okay, the blobs are not... Oh, I have a thought. I have to say, Cats, I feel like the Kung Fu Panda movie series has not been on an upward trajectory as far as quality. To that point, Bose, so there is the. Let me see if it's in. I think. There. Okay, we're adding physics tick in zone. In zone also. Okay. So process in GD script is an actual rendered frame. And it's you can cap it in the project is what the max frames per second is going to be. We have 60. So it will try to constrain it to 60 frames a second. You can also constrain the max number of physics frames that happen per rendered frame with a max number of physics frames per second kind of thing. So in this one, all we're doing is during this process, we go through each entity and make sure we tell that entity whether it's going to be visible or not, and then we tell it to draw. If the entity isn't visible, it won't draw itself. But there might be other things that it could do in that visual update that might be relevant. Then, so here's physics tick, and this physics tick only goes when the world says to do a physics tick. This is a unified tick off of the main object. Technically it would be, but this is it would be approximately that, but this also constrains a moment in order that physics happens. Just in case. So each zone is going to remove anything that's supposed to go away. And then it's going to go through and tell them, update your position or do your movement logic. Okay, so to make this work, we need to look at the enemy zone. Looks for enemies and bullets. Sorry, no, this is the bullet zone. It looks for enemies. Enemies look for bullets. There we go. Okay, so now we can lower the number. I didn't have the collision being mutual, and the only time something collides, it's the local entity gets told it collided with something else. So the bullet got told it collided with an opponent, which means the bullet says, oh, then I go away. But the enemy wasn't told it collided with a bullet. Okay, so we're going to go into our template object again, and we're going to reduce the number that we're spawning. Let's reduce it a little bit more. Yep. I think the half-second iframe is sufficient um, to get this handled. All right. Let's go into our constants for that. Global constants. Well, thanks for swinging through. Get some sleep there, cats. We're going to use this concept. Hello, Hog. We're going to use this concept. I may have things in the game that change the iframe value, whether aggressively or defensively. We'll see. Ah, off. Sure, I'm getting enough to drink here. Okay. So now we have a place that we can set the iframes. All right. Got a collision handled. So ultimately, what we're angling towards today is we want to get into a position where we can have an object add a modifier to the player's weapon when you touch it, and then it goes away. So right now, we have this remove me signal, and it is the only signal that happens. But we want to have another, or we want to have different things happen when something is collided with. One of those, and a very basic operation, is that a entity should inflict harm when it touches another one. And another is that an entity should take damage when harm is inflicted upon it. In our prior attempt, way back, we had this idea of an interface with an entity attached. And while that was somewhat effective, one, it relied on the node tree of Godot, and that's expensive, needlessly expensive. But the other is that it still required us to inquire about that object. Like, is a damageable object there? If yes, oh, okay, I will call a function that you have, and that will apply it. So this will be slightly less efficient, but my thought here is that we're going to have the concept of incoming and outgoing interaction handlers. So when I when I collide with another entity, I'm going to tell that entity, here are all the interactions I am visiting upon you. The basic thing is going to be I inflict harm. If it is an entity that is damageable, then that will be it will take that damage on the incoming side. We will take that incoming harm interaction, and we will pass that by everything that might care. And one of them might be, hey, I care about incoming harm. Fun things that can do is you could have incoming interactions that double up the effect. We do need to have some concept of health in an object that we can keep track of that, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So first, what we want to do is have a structure for this. We want to have a very straightforward way of having a packet of information sent that isn't too simple and doesn't assume too much. All right, Starlight. Thanks for swinging through. Slimes are actually going to be something that shows up later. Weakest enemies in the game are technically going to be the very first thing. Well, you would expect they're the very first thing, but the very first thing you're going to encounter in the game is not going to be a traditional enemy. So a lot of this is based on character lore and world building, but the first thing that you get XP from that will rapidly unlock the first weapon is a house. I don't know that I would add dogs. I, like many creators of media before me, generally would prefer to avoid pet animals to be present in a combative game. Okay, so what I'm thinking on here is how we can get the collision message to go out. Because we need a way to say, this cares about this message. And that message needs to be able to carry the object to it. So how are we going to do that? Now, I could use variants, where essentially an object itself knows about the incoming structure. Just a moment here. Okay. So we have a thing that's being collided with, and we have another thing that's colliding with it. So this one bumps that one. Hey there, Don. This one has a series of outgoing. Might look like oat, it's out. And let's say one of these is an attack. And that attack might have a series of properties like a damage number, might have like type, might have knockback is something that I want to incorporate, but we don't have any way of doing that just now. So this is all a series of data points that an attack carries with it. But under the model that I'd like, there might be a, there might be a take damage interface here. But how does it know this? So my thought is that first we have a name to the interaction that this inflicts. So the attack says I'm an attack, in string form. Or defined enumerated type. It tells the incoming interfaces, I'm this type. And any of them that care about that type are going to say, okay, I'm going to pass you into a function in me that knows what these values are. It knows that the parameter that I am passing in, this variant object, is actually of a given type. This is not safe. But, and there might be a way around it. There might be a way around it. The trick will be getting the data points back. One way could be that when I'm calling into this, it gives me a series of these objects back and says, these are the ones that respect the message. But that doesn't necessarily work. We could have a has a call. So there could be a I expect a get attacked function that looks like this. And we could ask it, does it have a member value called that? But that still doesn't guarantee the full signature of the function. So I think the idea that we pass an arbitrary object in and it tries to cast it, and if it can't cast it, that it asserts an error. I think that's how we're going to have to go. So, I'll back to it. So as I was referring, has method just looks for a method name. So it could tell, oh, it has handle collision, but it could not verify that colliding entity is there. Every object has its own code there, Bose. What we're trying to do is set up the communication between them without prior knowledge. So the attack object doesn't know whether the colliding entity has a take damage object on its incoming side. It just knows, here's the message that I'm sending. And one of those interactables on the other side might care. And that's what I'm going for, is that the entities don't know anything about the others other than they do a thing. Now, I do need some means of saying this message was resolved. Because it'll be important to know for each one what else we need to do. So, for example, an attack object may emit a signal that tells the entity, you hit something. Because you might need to do like piercing damage, where it is I hit an enemy, and that means I don't go away until I hit another entity. That's right, Tess. So it's like a one type of interactable might be able to handle a payload, and the other one might know how to deliver it. Kind of like a handoff model, with the added wrinkle that both of them are blindfolded. They only know that they've been handed a box. So one of them says, this box is one of these. And the receiving party is either going to say, I don't care about that box, or they're going to take the box. Yeah. What this lets me do is set values inside the interactables as like modules. You are damageable and you have 50 HP. What that damageable is going to say is anytime something hits me that causes damage, I will accept that message and I will lower that HP value. If that HP value hits 0 or less, I'm going to tell you that you're dead. And you will react accordingly. It will require some means of wiring up all of those signals. Alternately, it would be that it manipulates properties on the entity itself, and we'd have to say this object is intrinsically has hit points, and that they get lowered and that the entity will react accordingly. But that adds another layer of concepts to it, like bullets don't necessarily have HP, they don't take damage. I have not used AI to generate code bows, and I don't really ever have an intention to. Setting aside ethical considerations of that, given that the quote training data came from somewhere, and never credits or reimburses the sources of it. There's also the quality consideration. I have coded a great deal in my life, and I can say with incredible certainty, every code base that they derived code from has functional issues of some kind. Everyone that's ever done open source development has to deal with gluing rough edges together. And that's going to be what the entire limited language model is based on, is a whole bunch of rough edges mashed together like little children making dolls kiss. Just bashed together repeatedly. And sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. To extend the example, does the AI also create fully functional and legible unit tests to go with any code that it creates? I'm going to say almost certainly no, because the AI doesn't have understanding of what it did. It just created an image that maps to images that it has received, whether those are pictures or code or text. It doesn't know, there is no why. So if there is a problem with that code, human beings have to step in, and I'm going to say it's almost certainly going to be a one-for-one constantly. But we've now added a wrinkle that I don't know, as the human being, as the coder behind the that pushed the AI button. I don't know why that code was put in place. I don't have any justification for it. I didn't say, well, I looked at this Git repo and I copied this block of code because I looked up the information and found this does what I want. I put it in place, and then I scrubbed it down to make it fit our coding practices, our syntax practices, as well as adjusting it so that it has the proper fail safes and similar. So I now know what I did, and I can tell if it broke, if I'm good at it. You won't have that with the AI generated code. You are going to have to go back over that code with a fine-tooth comb, understand it, and piece it back together to do all of that stuff that you just did. Which, if the programmer has to go back through a body of code, parse it to understand it, correct it, tweak it, all of that stuff, then what did the AI do that wasn't the same as a person on the internet Googling for people describing how to perform particular operations? Because I would contend that the AI has generally accomplished less than that. You have produced code with likely no understanding of code to go with it. NVIDIA saying English will be the new coding language? Now, there's a separate thing that we could talk about on the front of, on that front, and that's AI assistance. It's not necessarily a whole lot better, but do you remember Clippy? Anybody know what Clippy is? Giving away some of my age. So Clippy was a... Okay. So Clippy is an early example of a AI assistant. Essentially, it was a little thing that popped up and says, hey, it looks like you're trying to do blank. Would you like help? It was a super crude expert system, which is what a lot of AI products that aren't chatbots end up being. Or at least what a lot of the functional ones end up being. Where you would do a thing, and if you were doing one of these specific things, it would respond with information on potentially how to do that. Glorified tutorial kind of thing. Usually not terribly helpful, because it could give you no specifics. This is where I think AI is most suitable. Is to parse what a person is up to, ask for confirmation what the person is up to. This is feedback data that it should get promptly and regularly. And then offer some degree of assistance based on the information available to the tool. So, using the Clippy example, it looks like you're trying to write a for loop. Would you like help? Now, that would you like help could be presented as IntelliType. It could just be a prompt like, hey, this looks like a for loop. Here, this is how you can make the shell of a for loop. And that's the simplest interaction. But you're not asking the... You're not going to an AI prompt and saying, write me Pong. Because all that's going to do, almost universally what that ends up doing, is it will spit a full Git repo back at you something that it has effectively copied wholesale from elsewhere. Maybe with some variations like grafted on, but those graft-ons are where things tend to go wrong. Because it does not know why. It only knows that it doesn't know. It has only been fed data shapes, and it mushes those shapes together. Again, it's the fingers problem. No matter how many times people tell it this is a hand, hands have 5 fingers, there are counter examples, like cartoons don't necessarily have 5 fingers. And additionally, how those fingers work and all of that have to be defined. A human being has to go in and constantly specify, this is how it should look. We're still seeing a whole lot of direct human intervention in data sets and language models to prevent things like the fingers problem, and it still gets through. Because again, AIs do not learn. They do not understand. They are algorithms that are primed with data. Using things like learn and understand are actually kind of mental pitfalls where we are anthropomorphizing an algorithm, like its code. We are asserting that the code is a person. We have no basis for that. It's that anthropomorphization that leads people to talk about, like, oh, AI is the future. We're going to have robots that are fully functional and are going to take our jobs within the next decade. People have been saying that since, oh man, like, what is it, the 50s? We have had people that looked at early computer programming and said, we're going to have AIs within the next X period of time, and they're going to replace human jobs. Because this program that I wrote is totally intelligent. And that happens constantly. People keep saying, oh, we've got this. And we don't. Will we never? I don't know. We'll have to see. But I say with some degree of confidence, at least in hindsight, of what we have done recently and before, we do not have that right now. We have something that is a facsimile to a lot of people. That it looks like it is intelligent. It looks like it can do the things we're doing. But the most sophisticated ones tend to have a whole lot of pageantry going on in the shadows behind it in order to sell that image. Lunar mentioned currency-based economy, and that is it reminds me, the flavor of the month before AI bots and similar, before AI was going to change the world, it was going to revolutionize how we programmed, how we did business, all of that. It was the blockchain. Decentralized currency is going to be the thing that revolutionizes our day-to-day life. And it didn't. It crashed and burned. I feel like we're going to have another crash and burn with AI before people get the picture, and it's going to recoil hard, which is unfortunate because it will hurt research. What was my first PC? I don't know specifically what it was, but I interacted with a DOS computer, a DOS-based computer, And I know there was somebody that had, like, I touched it effectively, played a game on it that was, it wasn't DOS, it was another one that was like an Amiga or something like that. Hey there, Isaac. Welcome. um, okay. Excuse me. It's about an hour in. I do need to take my first break. I will be back in just a couple minutes. And we're back. Sammy is over on the shelf. This much of a close up, you can still really see how glossy she is. You can also see, especially with tuxedos, that cats have like separate types of hairs running down their back as well. It's not like a whisker, like it's not the texture of a whisker in any way, but they serve a similar function in that they can tell very quickly if they're going to get touched on that surface. So they kind of, that's how they do the liquid cat thing. How they like flow away from your touch really quickly is that they can feel that contact coming even if it doesn't reach the skin. But supposedly, that's what you get with a lot of the white hairs on the back of a tuxedo. is that the same genetics that make their underbelly and paws and whatnot white also makes a lot of those like kind of detection hairs running down their fur white as well. Or so I have heard. Let's see. We're going to get Unity. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure why it would prevent a project creation. There might be some other idiosyncrasy that you're encountering. Wouldn't be able to say, Bose. There's a lot of physiology with humans too that is largely vestigial these days. It's another one. There's a lot of, scientific misinformation out there, but it's fun to see some of these, uh, to at least consider some of the concepts that are bandied about. Like, there's a type of cat, the Norwegian forest cat, which you'll see a lot of people say, hey, look, this is this Maine Coon, and no, it's a forest cat. Forest cats are big, but still smaller. But one thing forest cats have is that their dew claw, essentially, with a lot of cats, they have a fifth forepaw digit. Yes, Isaac, I am live on. I have a widescreen live and I have a short format live. There's a pinned link in my in each chat that leads to the other. But the thumb, essentially, people don't like to call it a thumb. It's again anthropomorphization. But that their dew claw is positioned a little differently than normal, which lets them have a different grip on like a climbable surface. So for forest cats, it's actually easier for them to climb downward than than other cats. Like they can reverse down a tree more easily because they don't have to essentially do a full the same kind of release. They don't have to sink their claws in the same way, that kind of thing. But it's those weird little subtle differences that you get. Okay. So, interactables. Yep, you do get a lot of similarities. A lot of the differences are in nuance in size. But one of the big elements to recognize is that for the most part, a domestic cat is a domestic cat. A lot of the physiological differences that people point to as far as breeds are human induced as opposed to environmental adaptations. Like the pug, the Persian cat did not naturally develop in order to have horrific lung and breathing problems. And no, my cats are entirely inside cats. 100%. Okay, so I think we need the concept of an interaction. Each interaction should have a reference to its parent object so that it can do things with that object as needed. We'll have to see. But let's start with that. We're going to need a pool for it, because we're going to be making a lot of these. Which means we'll need types, but we'll get there. So we have positioning. I will eventually move position and targeting, movement modifiers. All of this stuff will be moved out of the spawner folder. The reason I haven't done it yet is I need to make sure I have a clean commit before I do it. And then there's a little song and dance in the base project folder that you have to do whenever you do that sort of thing. The cat being seen is one of my 5 cats, Isaac. That cat is Sammy. On all of my short forms and all of that, those are my cats. I also want to move all the templates over to this folder, but making sure that, for the same reason, it's a process. Collisions, entities, spawners, templates. Okay. Okay. So we're going to need a base class. And each one of those objects is going to have to accept effectively a type and a payload. Hello, Gloopy. Indeed. That is the cat cam. Good an opportunity as any. Let's see how many we can spot. We have 4 out of 5. Should be 5 out of 5 once camera 1 gets its act together. All right, let's see. Sky is up in his cat tree. That is the upper left for widescreen and the lower right for tall form. Top center or upper left, depending on which one you're, or top center and wide and upper left and tall is Ember. Then on the tan blanket and the gray squishmallow are Mason and Sherbet in that order. And then Sammy on the heating pad on the shelf. She is the tuxedo. They are all little sweeties. Okay. So you need a base interaction object that has a... We could have a check in receive, but I think we can just have essentially an offer interaction. And we can have we can essentially have 3 results to an offer. It can accept it and consume it. So I'm making a game, Gloopy. Here, we'll show you what we're sitting on currently. We're making a Vampire Survivors style game. None of this is actual gameplay. This is all at the testing stage. The sprites I will be using, though. But, you know, monsters run in, projectiles fly out. given the rate that the blobs are spawning and the speed that they're moving at, you can actually see how the spawning logic works, uh, in that it circles around the screen. So the blobs are coming in as sort of a converging spiral. The gimmick that we're going for with this this incarnation of a bullet heaven is rolling with something like how Noida builds spells. You will have a series of cards that you slot in, and the sequence and which cards they are will determine the behavior of any given weapon that you're using. We'll see how it works, but I have high hopes. Okay, so we need a base interaction. It's going to inherit. I think it needs to be a resource again. Yeah. We're going to have a bit of that vibe, Lunar. Right now, I'll show you this in a moment. Just bring this up. Right now, I'm feeling this pattern as far as visuals on an upgrade, and then you have like a little icon on top of it to denote what it do. Might add some more color to what they do, but I feel like having a kind of that 1-bit color palette for what the icon is a good idea. And what'll happen is you might have the sequence of them will be relevant. Yeah, I always felt like for whatever reason, I always thought of the little upgrade things in Noida, the little spell chunks as cards. You know, you had a pool of them, and you could line them down. Might end up doing that. That was one of the thoughts that I had to determine typing, was that there was something that you could look at on it to say it's this type. I don't want to rely entirely on color because that can create weird results for some folks. But given that I have what amounts to 4 bits, I have 4 base 4 elements. Oh. Well, hopefully that vacation will be fun for you, Isaac. Oh, but yeah. The idea will be you have a series of those. There are some chips can only go in specific areas of the spell. Yeah. It will probably be a composite. Color coding and color, shape, language, that kind of thing. I want to incorporate both, be as accessible as possible with the imagery. Okay, so we have a base interaction. You might not be able to notice it, might not be terribly visible on your screen, but until this text here goes green, this pale green color, that class is not registered. If ever you go into the script and it's gray again, that class is currently not recognized. Yep. If you looked there, Lunar, each side of the chip had one narrow peg. And what that'll mean is that I effectively have, what would it actually be? Each side is effectively 4 bits. At the moment, it's more like 3 bits at most, in that there's kind of 4 toggle switches. One will always be toggled. But it still gives me a lot of variation to be able to say that, then pair it with maybe like a color as to which state a given side is in, which would give me way more types than I need. But then you could also make it like matching sides kind of thing. Don't know if we'll go down that road. That might be overcomplication. And folks, if it seems like I am talking to somebody who you can't see in your chat, it's because they're in one of the other 2 chats. There are 2 YouTube chats and 1 Twitch chat. Okay. A function, and it's going to be what do I call this? So it's always going to be one interaction affecting another. We're going to call it deliver. Type is a string, and well, I appreciate it, Isaac. I really try to go live 5 times a week. Okay. Design-wise, this is the part I don't like, is the payload. This is something that I'm going to have to document very, very carefully. Shape language-wise, as far as like the actual like shape of the little chip object comes into difficulty because of the sprite size I'm using. I have considered bumping up to 32 by 32, but for the time being, I'm sticking with 16 by 16. Isaac, it's not difficult. Like, mechanically, the steps that I go through to launch a stream is not difficult, but it's an investment. It's a time, effort, and energy investment to do so. These are Pringles. Ugh. There was a time that I liked Pringles. I don't know if it's a taste change over time. That's always a possibility. Like, you know, the things that you like or you think taste good changes over time. Or if it's a formulation change, like how they constructed them. But I feel like Pringles, as of now, taste kind of bland and the texture is different. Lays are good, but I find them very greasy. Potato chip flavor wise, sour cream and onion is the only variant flavor I like. Hello, Chavez. At the moment, Lunar, I don't really have a plan for having anything other than a linear progression in the icons. As in, it will always be left to right. There won't be a fork kind of condition. So, not in the bioprototype sense how, like, at this point, split into two. The general idea right now is, again, weaponry will be built up in modules. If you've been following, we have like movement patterns and whatnot that control how something behaves. So I can show some of that real quickly here. It's in spawner movement. No, entities templates 4. So I have move straight line. Let's change this to move spiral. And we go. Kind of like weapon mods. At the moment, there are 3 concepts. And we're thinking of a 4th. I bounced some ideas back and forth with Tass a couple nights ago. But the first type is the weapon itself. So the mouse will always be a homing weapon, and it will always have a base damage of X. But how it behaves immediately after being fired is different. It will still try to home in, but maybe you're influencing it by making it orbit or spiral, that kind of thing. So here's the same projectile, but with spiral movement. You can see how it's arcing outward. We can then do, let's say 2 squares out. Here's orbiting. They spiral out until they hit a limit, and then they start rotating. And all kinds of stuff like that. We could add... let's see, where's move in straight line? So if we add that with an orbit... See how they're kind of deviating out. The blobs aren't supposed to spawn that fast. I can change that real quick. Be easier to see what I'm talking about anyway. About 1 enemy a second until later in the game is going to be more likely. So yeah, they move out, they start to go into an orbit, but now they're going in the direction that they had. You can see they're still trying to pivot, but the straight line direction that they have, the random direction that they chose initially, is throwing them off. Eventually there will probably be a big monster that will appear at intervals. Some sort of kind of demarcation point. But yeah, you have things like that. Here, we can have some fun here. Spiral. Spiral. Here's 3 consecutive spirals. You don't notice as much with this. There is a different twist to the way they move. Here, let's make them spawn super fast for that. One of the reasons that I code offline is that we will get off on tangents like this where I just show off what we've got. It's starting out as a PC game, but I'm planning on compiling it. I'm compiling it and building it with the goal of it being flexible as far as how the platform can work. Remove target random direction. Fixed direction. Hey there, Scary. I do recall you from comments. Here is triple spiral, but without the random direction throwing things off. You see how there's little, like, twists in the direction now and again. They only live a few seconds, so. So here, let's change all of these to, oh, well, that's part of the reason. There's an orbital in there. Here's triple orbit. They try to circle the player. Wow, we hit a hard hitch in there. But we can see from the stacked orbit we are getting 3 different layers. I did not actually anticipate this. I wonder, actually. You know, I haven't tested this. And we will right after a quick break. Sorry, folks. And we're back. Yes, and per what Barbed Wire was saying earlier, one of the chat rules is not to monopolize chat. Just throw that out there. So it's okay to chat back and forth. I really do encourage it. But remember, there are other people in chat who might want to be saying stuff. So if you flood the chat, they might not be able to participate. Just FYI. Okay, so one type of movement is targeting. So I can say target a random direction. And then I could say move in a straight line. And then target a random direction. And move in a straight line. So now we'll have two random targets. Now we're still getting... That's really uniform, though. That's weird. Why is it so uniform? Spread should not be distorting it that much. We should be able to get any direction. Okay, let's try to distort this a little more. We're going to add a speed multiplier only after I'm going to add 2 to the second one. Okay, I think I know what's actually happening here. So the problem is move random direction will respect what is passed into it subsequently. Because we want to be able to predefine it. We want to be able to predefine which direction a given projectile moves in when it's coming in. That one. We have 4 out of 5 visible. Okay, so move random direction is being monopolized after. Because all of them have decided which way to move after that. But it's not really what I would like. It would be nice if each one remembered its direction. The reason we're doing this is that the spawner, and I may just give up on that concept there, but within the spawner, when we are actually making the entity, so during this process, when it's ready, we are going to determine, okay, here is a new entity. and then we spawn that entity. We go through and initialize it. Here is target direction. And target direction is able to be remembered subsequently. But we had a spot that we did that. Yep, we call fix spawn. And we check our positioner chain. So this is where we break it down. This is where it breaks down. Is this direction is determined in that process. So we create the entity, we have the positioner chain, adjust its position. But that initial direction is remembered. Which throws things off a little bit. Because subsequent direction changes don't really have any impact. Like target random direction over and over doesn't actually change it. We're going to say that's fine for now. Let's see. Random direction, move in straight line. We should be able to do a move spiral. And get a slightly different result here. So there's a spiral with its movement being influenced up front. And this positioner chain is always remembering its initial position. I think that's a problem we do need to solve. I also don't know why we're getting that gap in there. Orbit. And Bose, the Mamba is a type of dance. Now here's with an orbit. It's trying to lock itself at a distance of 5, but the move straight line is pushing it out of that. Well, see, currently they're spawning on the player here. They spawn somewhere on screen. Here, we'll remove the spread down so we can see it better. I actually wonder, we do spawn on spawner path, and do we have target player done? Just kind of messing around right now, folks. We do have target player. Okay, excellent. So we go to template 4. We are going to spawn on the spawner path. And instead of target random enemy, well, target random enemy doesn't do anything. We may have skewed our test a little bit. So we're going to have target player in there. Okay, we're going to make sure it's an orbit. We're going to make it a tight orbit here. That's kind of interesting because their location should be here. Okay, they're locked onto their target, but they're not perpetually moving closer. Okay, there's some further issues with orbit, so let me just jot down some notes here. With my pen that got knocked loose. Maybe someday we'll get back into Payne's Creek killings, but I don't know. Payne's Creek killings, I feel like it ran into some silly kind of adventure game puzzle stuff. Where it's like, ooh, the key code is the dartboard. It's like, wait a minute. So what? You go through every night and make sure that the dartboard is reconfigured? Cleaning up some notepads here. I'm referring to a game that we were playing before. But we veered off. Sadly, it was not an electric dartboard. Okay. I don't think the position or random direction was actually broken. I think it was because I had random mob, which does nothing right now. We need burst, and each burst is a spread, and each spread is 90-degree cone. Each cone is targeting a random direction. All right, Bose, thanks for joining us. So move in a straight line and then spiral. You can see how it's like twisting the spiral a little bit. Now, spiral move in straight line is different. Subtly. Does what happen automatically? Yes. We're doing the basic bullet heaven pattern, and that's that for that weaponry will auto trigger at an interval. And the behavior of it is determined by a sequence of modifiers that are added, and that's going to be one of the core game mechanics, is altering that sequence yourself. Okay, let's remove the orbit from the spiral. Yeah, the move in a straight line distorts the spiral, generally into like a series of tighter loops. If we then add... let's add S-curve in there just to be silly. Now, S-curve is a kind of a wave pattern. Spiral says move in an expanding, an expanding spiral. It gains speed as it rotates. Move in a straight line and target random. It does what it says on the tin. Spread shot says split it into 3 projectiles in a 90-degree cone. Spawn on player says we're spawning on the player. Burst fire says that we do shots in half-second intervals. So if I actually expand the time interval out a little bit, you'll be able to see it better. Let's say that it takes 2 seconds between waves of shots. So it'll go 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, then 1, 2, 3. Now they're not homing. It's that the combination of behavior is giving us this different movement. And the sequence matters. Target random direction, you generally want the targeting first, because otherwise we're going to get a real variation in the initial pattern. At the moment, I'm not planning on having maps. Aside from a procedural element, there will be a starting point, and there will be logic that is distance from starting point. Eventually, I might have some different regions based on like which direction from starting point, or how far, kind of further, how far is in which direction. But it's not going to be like a fixed map. Not like the later Vampire Survivors stuff, like the earlier Survivors stuff. So we have move spiral early and then move in straight line. But if we shift the S curve to right after spiral, we should see a difference here. So if you look, they're not converging back on the player as much. So this is what we're looking for, is the randomization element is not which weapons you get early and which power-ups you get early. It's going to be more which weapon you get access to. So if I start with homing mouse, if I get other weapons later, that will still matter. But after that, it's not about do I get an upgrade to the same one, it's which upgrade modules do I get? And do I want to apply them to a given weapon? There's going to always be an opportunity to change it, but the sequence of the modules as you put them into the weapon and when or if you decide to change them will be a big factor in survival. Because early on, just getting, so it, the weapon might start as random direction, move in straight line. That might be its default behavior. And then getting, say, 3-shot spread, and we'll put it at a nice default interval for what it does. So getting a 3-shot spread over a single projectile is absolutely a force multiplier. And we're still getting multi-collisions when they happen right on top. That's weird. Okay, no, not weird. We need to get that collision interaction in. Right now, both the blob and the bullet say, hey, I am interacting with you. And each of them says, if I interact with another entity, I self-destruct. The player is a catbot, Isaac. Oh, that's also weird. Let's spawn at 0. Did I put spawn at 0? Oh, I don't have a spawn at. The catbot is, OOC, my earlier avatar. In character, it is the prior product of the Catbot Corporation Catbot Factory, and is still a supported product. You can see it in my earlier streams. Spawn on player. Let's get that in there. Okay, so right now the interaction is mutual destruction. If one touches the other, it goes away. So even though the other target is not ignoring collision, the object itself has not collided yet, so it'll still self-destruct. So again, the blobs are not going to be the first enemy or necessarily like traditionally an enemy. There is a backstory to that. Some of it is derived from our Noida mod that we played on Twitch a lot and a little bit on YouTube for a while. We used to play Noida a whole lot and we have stopped. um, but the narrative has grown. There are a couple of short form videos and a bit in my debut stream that explain the current up to date lore. And this game will have a little bit more of that once it's ready to roll. Okay, so responding. So we need to get into the interactions to truly have actual iframes. So, for example, enemies only take damage from bullets. Bullets don't actually care that they care that they inflicted damage on something. And their interaction with something else will just be, did I cause a meaningful collision? So if it touches something and says, hey, have you been collided with, kind of thing, then it will then impart damage back. Interaction can be a back and forth communication. We'll have to see how this plays out. But in general, what I want to have is the idea that when a collision happens, there's a sequence of events. The bullet is going to say, I inflict harm on you. Then, if that took place, if that was accepted at all, then the next thing the bullet is going to say is, if I inflicted harm on you, I will self-destruct. Or it will say, I inflicted a hit, and it might have a limit to the number of hits it can do. And then, if that runs out, then the bullet self-destructs. So we need a way to daisy chain that operation properly. And there's layers of operation to that. Yeah. So, like, the impact, the inflicted damage of a bullet is different than the inflict damage of an enemy. An enemy doesn't necessarily hurt itself by bumping into the player. And it doesn't hurt itself by bumping into a bullet. It also doesn't necessarily care how often that happens. It is possible that we would have enemies that blow up on impact with the player, or that have like a self-destruct fuse built into them. But for the time being, they don't. Whereas a bullet, when it hits an enemy, it does two things, really. Is that it inflicts harm, and it also effectively inflicts harm on itself. It removes a hit from itself. So that might be how we do that with bullets. But I feel like there needs to be a separate trait. Anyway. So in interactions, we have a deliver event. The deliver event should be able to be rejected, accepted, or consumed. Indeed, Baboon, happy Pride. I don't know. I think if we accept it, we should just stop. Yeah. I think if we accept it, we should just stop. So we have an enum, and this is also... I don't think we need this to be in constants. Let's put it in constants. It'll be used in 2 places. So we're going to have interaction result accepted. Say interaction result. Using enum anywhere else for this. Just be accepted. And then we'll have rejected. No, that should be fine. Doesn't really change the length of it much, but I think we're okay there. Okay, so I have an interaction result rejected. I'm going to reload the project because we just created a new global enum. And then in interaction, that is going to return a constants dot interaction result. This will return by default, all of them will reject a result. So what this will mean is that it will the calling function will keep trying to deliver this until it gets some sort of result, or until it runs out. If it runs out, nothing happened with that collision, and so we'll continue along. No collision occurred. We may still trigger a collision timeout when that happens. But ultimately, I don't think so. Unless that's part of its interactions. Or a result of the entity is whether it will always cause a timeout to avoid collision detection spam. So if we do in entity, then we need logic that will go through and say its interaction collision collection. It will do a for each on it, and it will try to have a deliver to it. So when an entity collides with another, when it is the actor, when it is I collide with you, it will go through its collection of outgoing interactions and apply those to the receiving entity in sequence. So there needs to be there is an incoming function that is to deliver a payload. Tricky. Again, so what we're looking at is we have two collections of interaction objects, one that is outgoing and one that is incoming. Well, for outgoing and the other that is for incoming. So when an object collides with another, it will send all of its outgoing messages to another entity that will then hand those messages to its full list of incoming processors, interactions, in sequence. And that message will either make it through the whole list, or it will be it will be consumed at some point in the chain, and then that will stop. Probably some sort of while loop will set up, but so how to do this? This will give us, when we deliver, we could pass that in to its receive. So we need a target as an entity. So the entity that is doing the colliding is going to iterate over its interactions and say, effectively, I collided with this thing, deliver your message unto it. And that corresponding entity will have a receive interaction method that this will call. And it will pass in the type and payload to that. And then the receiving entity iterates over its. Okay. So it doesn't actually do that. And then an entity has a function. We'll change that to deliver interaction. And it has a type as a string and a payload. Return a okay. So we're going to add our logic into this. I don't know if we're actually going to use this return yet. What this would be able to do is when a given one delivers the result, when it's told to deliver the result, it will get a return back and say, did anything react to this? If the object doesn't react to it, that is an opportunity for us to apply some sort of behavior. So we could do things like, if a bullet did not collide with what it hit, then that is an opportunity for us to say something like, hey, this bullet bumped into something that ignored it. So it's going to wait some period of time before we check again. Probably wouldn't want to do that. But more likely it would be things like the bullet attack kind of interaction says, did I hurt something? If I did, decrement the number of hits I can inflict by 1. Then at the beginning of it, it could also be checking that and say, hey, I inflicted a hit. If I did, trigger iframes for me. I don't collide anymore. So I won't inflict hits anymore until that iframe is up. And during the entity's life cycle, we could be looking for things like, how many hits do you have left? This could also be, we could use HP on the bullets and say that each HP on the bullet is a marker there. Don't worry about it, Isaac. No one is obligated to stay in the stream or to attend to streams. It should always be something that you want to do in the moment. And hello, Lewis. Okay, so we need upkeep. We're going to call this interaction. Oh, so we have an So outgoing is an array of interaction elements here. And then we have incoming. This piano music, there's a whole variety of them. The genre listing on Epidemic Sound, where I get my music, is generally solo piano. I've considered adding some extras, but or some additional types. But this tends to have the sound that I like. I'd also like solo cello kind of stuff, but that doesn't seem to be a genre that they've got. Well, welcome back then, Lewis. And hello, Sam. We're going to set this to an empty array. So if we have receive interaction, constants.interaction result is equal to rejected. We're going to return result. Question unclear, Isaac. My initial target is something like Steam. If I can't get it on Steam, I might just try some alternate distribution platform, but Steam is the initial target. If that works out, then we'll see from there. But of all of the possibilities, Steam is the easiest one to approach. Bar. Int is 0 and interaction number is less than incoming interactions dot size. Do the following, which will include interaction number plus, which will be at the end. Okay, plus equals 1. No idea at this time, Isaac. We are still a long ways from complete. And hello, Nina. /3. Very long ways out. So each interaction needs to have a deliver interaction. And it also needs a function to receive interaction. Type is a string and a payload. And it will return that. And by default, it returns rejected. Deliver interaction should... No, deliver interaction will be customized. Variable. It will have this, and each instance will define it. And we'll have inconstants. See you later, folks. Thanks for joining. Okay. No, let's have a function. Get type returns a string by default. It will return get type. That's your decision, Nina. Returns nothing. Nothing should accept this, and this should always cause a problem. Target, isn't it? Type get payload. This creates a fixed structure for us. Receive interaction is very likely to be the one that is overloaded, or overridden, and get payload and get type. So get type gets overridden to change the return type, and get payload is important in that it constructs what is being sent. So this will probably be a custom value. I don't know how that's going to play out. We might have to create pools and similar to cover that. Going to step away, and then we're going to start. We're going to finish out the rest of the skeleton of this and go from there. And we're back. Sure, I've got the cat cam locked on. Okay. Incoming interactions, interaction number, not receive, interaction type, payload. I don't like that that line is that long, but what you gonna do? We'd have to have shorter class names, and there's a limit on how that will ever work. So this will do its thing, period. Whatever our incoming interactions are, they will try to handle it. As soon as one is handled, we stop the loop and we return whatever the result was. Yeah. So this is the default. It will only ever reject. Yeah, that's the trick with it. I could make some of this stuff local, but eventually we still have a point at which we have to reference which object is it in, what is the name of the enum. I could change this to just be interaction accepted, rejected, or consumed, or whatever I want it to call, and just have it be a int value, and that would truncate it. But by nature of so that would be like a string. By constraining it to this, I can control it to some extent. Especially since this is only ever dealt with in code. If the value does not match one of these, it won't work in code. It will have a problem. Or at least nothing will interpret it. So I don't have to worry that I need to remember what 2 means in a result. But I could truncate this down to just be interaction accepted, rejected as integers. Yeah. Change this to count. We can keep it. Legibility. What I'm working with is legibility here. And the more verbose the code is, the more legible it can be. But at the same time, if the lines are super long, legibility drops. So let's see. I don't think I can change these. I could lower them down instead of being incoming interactions. We're just going to call them incoming and outgoing. And then we can change this to a constant. A single constant instead of an enum. This still gives us some control. All right, Barbed Wire, thanks for swinging through. Interaction. These are integer, constants, interaction rejected. Undefined. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so then in handle collision, hey there, lobotomy. So as an integer is equal to 0. And I don't know that we care when we deliver, because each one of those should handle it themselves. Which means we don't need a while loop. Or interaction in outgoing, interaction not deliver interaction to colliding entity. Okay, so we shouldn't get errors, but we shouldn't get any result from collisions right now. Okay. this matter. Okay. Y order is universal. That's good. I think that's still okay. Alright, so then the next thing will be having special interaction types. So the script inherits interaction. It is self-destruct. No, we're not going to call it self-destruct, actually. We're just going to call it die. Special scenario. Yeah. Yep. Ember and Sky are all snuggled up. They're buddies. Okay, so in interaction, we need to override get type and payload. We do this so that we can seal that this is encapsulated. I can change how get type, get payload, and deliver interaction work without having to go in and edit the entity. We're keeping the functionality actually within the relevant object. Okay. I don't think interaction die, it's going to have a type because we want all of them to have a type, but it doesn't have a payload. Because nothing, it should never be a outgoing. We could have a flag on it that says how it interacts, whether it's an incoming or an outgoing, so that we could save ourselves some pain. But for the time being, we won't have that logic. So it doesn't have a payload. So we just won't override that. But what we will do is it will always return accepted Oh, um, we could pass in the target entity to receive interaction, which would save us having to have, yeah. This makes it so an entity doesn't, an interaction technically doesn't have, it doesn't actually know um, who owns it. We're just telling it, handle it as if you did. Entity. That's possible, Lunar. At this moment, we don't have the idea of status conditions, but that's something that I've been thinking on, is how that would work. That would probably be its own entity, and it would be handled akin to how movement is. So we could say, resolve status or something like that. And each status condition would handle the delta and what it would do as a result. So it might say, okay, look for the nearest projectile or get all projectiles within and pull them a little bit. That creates some interesting results, though. We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there, if we get there. Sort of reverse home, not even reverse homing, but regional homing, Got that, and then a die. Okay, yeah. So when the entity gets a receive interaction, it's going to pass in itself. Its signal entity has entity dot remove me signal name. Which means we need to move it to constants. Hey there, Laura. How you doing? Oof. So if other things need to be able to trigger the remove me signal, we could have a method on an entity that just tells it to die. Well, I will join you in about 10 minutes. Feel like an entity should not be exposing that signal. So we're going to encapsulate that. It is not the remove method. It is function send remove signal. Get signal move me signal name. Okay, so then in the interaction, we're going to say target dot send the remove signal. Okay, let's see if we can bang out another one real quick here. Now we're going to create interaction attack. Okay, we're going to call this one bullet hit because this is different. This is fundamentally different. Because what bullet hit does, it will behave differently than if a monster strikes something. If a monster strikes something, it's trying to inflict harm on the player. But if a bullet hits something, it will inflict harm on whatever it struck, since anything that it can strike is something that it's going to try to hurt. If it does, then it will consume one of its hits and trigger its iframes. If whatever it hit is not struck, we may still trigger iframes. Which means entity should have trigger iframes. Oh, iframes is so inside baseball, but, you know, what are you going to do? Default. What did we call it? Base iframe duration. Now, we set it to base iframe duration. Well, let's, if time until collidable is you shouldn't need to worry about less than. Delta, which is a float. Take here. Encapsulation. Clean it up. So we update the iframes whenever we move, based on how much time has passed. Okay. So then we are going to go into interaction die and take the same thing. It's going to be interaction bullet hit. Okay, when it receives interaction in the base interaction will always reject it. We're going to say bullet hit should generate a payload. Because it will say I'm a bullet hit, and it will return some sort of class or entity here, or value. And then it will also... No, it's not just that. It cares about the receive interaction result. Okay. Function deliver. Action result, which is an int. Handle result. Okay. Welcome back, Tabby. We are just finishing up for the day. Okay, we'll have to finish this ideally tomorrow. But we're getting close. Okay. Handling the handle result is an overridable. Deliver interaction will always be the same. This is uniform. Okay. All right, we'll save right there. And we'll go from here. All right. We did spend a little bit of time just messing around, showing off where we were with projectiles. But we did get started with the interactions. This is the skeleton that we need in order to handle to start down the road of things like projectiles hurting monsters, monsters hurting the player, as well as pickups doing something. So like your XP pickups, the treasure box equivalents, that kind of thing. And we'll go from there. One thing that I'm kind of interested in is perhaps omitting the concept of XP and instead just going for there are periodic pickups. Because by removing the need of picking up XP items, it removes a lot of the assumed behaviors in the game. There are a lot of them that say like, oh, you need a vacuum range because that's how you get XP. And I feel like dodging the monsters is a sufficient reason to move around. Above and beyond that, it's for a good while in any of these, you always have to move around to avoid getting hit. And I think additionally, if I have it where the pickups are something that spawn elsewhere on the map, that encourages movement as well. So, anyway. That's odd. But, and again, anyway. We'll pick this up tomorrow. I want to get the basic attack in. The die interaction is not really meant to exist. More likely you're going to have things like a power-up, grant power-up will be whatever it's configured to give. Perhaps it will tap into a random table kind of thing. It will impart that on the player. And then it will go away. If I collide with something, then try to give it an upgrade module. Yeah. And the fun thing is, interactions can trigger other interactions. So I could have an interaction that says, inflict harm on this entity. Within that interaction, it might say, hey, here's a thorns interaction, a retaliatory damage interaction. And it could immediately turn around and say, here's an attack action back at you, Which could potentially cause an infinite loop until the death of one of the parties, but, we have options. But I want to thank everybody for watching today. I do hope you had a good time. If you did and you haven't already, consider liking, following, subscribing, all of that good stuff based on the platform that you're on. It will help you get content that you like in the future, and hopefully I will see you as a result of that. My mouth movements aren't really functioning as much today. All right, folks. Next stream is scheduled to be tomorrow. Hopefully that will happen. I'm hoping that the disruptions of this week are over. All right. Goodbye, everyone.